So let me turn this off. All right. How are you guys? Hope everybody's doing well on this Sunday. Thank you for coming, stopping in, Dree. So today I wanted to talk about, I know the Leilani Simon trial is over, but I've been working on this project for several days. And this is actually only part of it. But I wanted to look at some of the testimony that was given during the trial and maybe kind of start a conversation about how is some of that testimony, how you guys think it might have impacted the jurors' decision. And when I sat down and I looked at it really close, I found a lot of really things that I thought was interesting, and I'm hoping that maybe you guys will think is interesting as well. So actually, let me turn my ticker back on. No ticker. There we go. Okay, and I want to stay on topic with this. Okay, so we're going to hop over here, and we're going to take a look at the first set of testimony.
Now, is this...
Okay, so this testimony, this is, we're going to speak to, this is Sergeant Bobby Stewart, and he's talking about the search for Quinton Simon, and he's a longtime officer in with the Chatham County Police Department, and he was the first officer on the scene when Quinton was reported as missing. So let's take a look at this little snip that kind of jumped out at me. And yeah, let's take a look.
Now, as the senior man on scene, you were on a senior man initially, right?
Yes, sir.
Once you've gotten this initial story, what do you then shift gears into doing?
Well, we shifted gears and I asked her what was the last place she saw him. And she told me in the bed there. And then the front door, we assumed about him going out the front door. If he went out the front door, then it could have been the front yard. And then there was woods behind the house. And there was the roadway above the road, which passed in front of the house and went south. So you go south of the house and then north of the house.
Did you task out some officers to search the house itself?
Yes, I did, sir. While I was talking to her, I asked her, did they search the house and look for him? She said yes. So I said, well, we're going to search it again. So I sent 2 officers in the house.
Do you remember which 2?
I think it was Gormley and I think Jepson.
Okay. And did they go do that?
Yes, sir.
And what was, you mentioned Daniel Voss was one of the initial officers there with you. What was his role?
He was talking to the lady.
Okay. Did you, at any point did you call other officers out beyond the initial 4, you, Gormley, Jepson, and Voss?
Yes, sir, I did.
And what did you want additional officers there for?
To aid in the search of the area. It was quite a big size area. And once they started arriving, I had officers check to the south of the residence, down to Veterans Parkway, and also had officers check to the north of the residence, up to Broad Avenue.
Now, you had officers canvassing the area looking for the boy himself, right?
Yes, sir.
And what else did you have them go out and look for?
I advised them to check the residence as they was checking the area to see if there was any cameras.
Okay, like Ring doorbell cameras
Yes,
and things like that. So you had people out doing that.
Yes, sir.
And did you also have them canvassing for witnesses, potential people who might have seen the child either on his own or with somebody else?
Yes, we told them to knock on the doors and try to make contact with the people that live there, see if they knew anything.
So initial effort focuses on searching the house and searching the general area around the house, if I'm understanding.
Yes, sir.
Did you yourself personally search any particular area?
I did.
And can you tell us about that?
While I was standing just inside the gate, the backyard area, there was an open shed to the right. It had an RV. We walked over in that area, me and another officer, and checked it. We left there and went. There was a shop directly behind the house. We checked that area, but it was locked up. We inquired about a key, but they said the gentleman who had the key to it wasn't there. So we searched around it, looked at behind the stuff that was there.
Okay. So you weren't able to get into the RV initially because of lack of a key.
Correct.
Okay. Did the officers that showed up to help with the search efforts, where did they come from?
There was other officers that was assigned to my team that day.
Okay. The same beat 7 or different beats?
No, sir. They was from beat 8 and beat 9.
Okay. And those are other patrol areas in the West Chatham area?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you have other officers kind of flooding in from other places to help out?
Yes, sir. When you have a missing child, you call everybody.
Okay. Now, at any point during your response, were you involved in making any follow up on this claim by the defendant that perhaps the boy's father was responsible?
Yes, I did.
And can you tell us about that, please?
While I was for myself, and Officer Boss was there. I asked the lady if she knew where he lived.
You asked what lady?
The lady here with the black glasses.
Okay. You asked the defendant whether she knew where whom lived.
The ex.
Okay. The boy's father?
Yes, sir.
And what did she tell you?
She gave me she told me a county. I wrote it all down. She told me where he lived at. She gave me the county that he lived in. So what I did is I contacted that police department that's in that county.
And what did you ask him to do?
I advised them who I was looking for, gave them the name that I was looking for, and asked them did they know of him. And while I was talking to her, she told me she didn't know the address, but she gave me some reference points.
What do you mean by that?
Like she told me some reference points. There was a store. She told me the name of the store, and I think she said it was a little campground or something. But she told me the name of it, and it was a large sign there. So I gave that information to the officer who called me back from the county.
Okay.
He told me I think I know what it is.
All right. So you said she gave you some reference points of like businesses near
That's
where the boy's father lived?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Kind of walk you on to the general area?
That's correct.
Okay. And was there any result from that while you were out there?
The officer.
Okay, so there were a few points that I thought were really interesting. So the overall story of what Bobby Stewart is telling us is he's giving us a overview of what happened when he arrived on scene and organizing the search, and then some information about what he spoke to Ms. Simon about. And when he spoke to her, he said that she mentioned her ex might have taken Quentin. Just because she says or she suspects that Quentin's father took him, that's not proof that she took him. Something we all know. And but she's offering a theory, and it's based on her feelings or her past experiences with her ex. But she doesn't have any concrete evidence to support her reasoning for saying that. It's a common thing in testimonies like this where people will talk about a gut feeling. And the problem with that is it might point things, an investigation, in the wrong direction. It can potentially sway focus in the wrong direction very early on, even though it's not grounded in actual facts. I mean, it can be true, they can be right, but they're not always right. Something else that I found really interesting that I think had or could potentially have a impact on the jury is the size of the search. He's talking about calling in this department, calling in search dogs, calling in this part of the community. There's even a part where he talks about he calls another county. He's taking the time because Leilani doesn't know where her son's father lives. She doesn't know his address. She only knows how to get there. And she's like, kind of like, giving him maybe street names, points of reference in this other community. So that's taking considerable time for him to call this other community and try to figure out where Quentin's father lives. So think about this. This is a lot of people. They are calling in people, 10s, 20s, maybe 30 some odd people, just, higher up detectives to start investigating the scene to look for Quentin. Then there's all these other, just beat cops. They're looking for Quentin. They're calling in dogs. And I mean, it's just, this is huge. And it should be. When a child goes missing, it should be huge. the thing is when you're sitting and you're talking about this, or when he's talking about this in a jury box, if you think about it, kind of think about, how does it make you feel when you hear about all of these different people coming in to investigate this? It kind of, your anxiety kind of starts coming up. And it's, doing these neighborhood sweeps, it just ramps up the urgency, and it makes you kind of this feeling of urgency. And this is true testimony. This is what happened. This is factual. It also has an emotional component to it that can be used to paint a specific picture to a jury. So he was the first person to testify, and this is only day one testimony. So his decisions, their decisions that are made based on experience and training. But it also kind of shows you, like when he talks about contacting the other county, that kind of means that he's also kind of got this other thing out in the periphery to another possible avenue that is, taking away resources. So there's kind of like this little, I don't know how I would describe it, almost like a branch or something. The energy is traveling through to look for Quentin's father and to investigate this possible avenue of where Quentin might be. So it gives this really kind of almost, frenetic or buzzing kind of a feeling to really impress upon the jury how serious law enforcement was taking this situation, as they should have. So the next person that we're going to look at is, I'm trying to remember his name. I know it's
Initially.
okay. So this is Corporal Cody Jepson, and I wanted to kind of break down his testimony about arriving on scene and what things, there was something that jumped out at me about his focus, and we'll take a look at that.
And she approached Sergeant Stewart and gave this initial kind of blast of information.
Yep.
She said something to the effect of the door having been open, right?
Yep.
Did you go and look at the front door to see what it looked like?
I did.
And at some point after doing that, did you go ask for her, the defendant, for some clarification on what the exact state of the door was at the time that she woke up and saw it open?
Yes, sir, I did.
And why did you go ask her for that clarification?
Just further knowledge, see if it was, really basically if it was kicked in, broken in, how was it opened, if it was locked, unlocked.
Did you see any of that stuff in the door frame, any damage or anything like that?
I did not, sir.
Okay.
Everything appeared as a door should be.
And other than those interactions with the defendant and searching through the house, what was the remainder of your involvement at the scene? What did it consist of?
Okay, so if you notice, he's mostly talking about a door and what a door looks like. This is another place where the investigation can kind of, get off track. And so he's checking to see if the door, is it kicked in? Is there signs of forced entry or not? Is there signs of a struggle or not? Can I, is Quentin around here or not? And he's making an assumption that this is either someone broke in and took Quentin, or he left on his own, like his mother said. This kind of tunnel vision that he has on doors and the disturbances, he's opening himself up to missing clues as to how to find, for finding Quentin. In these situations, this information, as far as looking over the scene, looking for a missing child, actually a lot of these crimes, it doesn't just fit into two neat categories. It's not either or. There's a lot of in between. He's not a forensic expert, and just because he didn't spot anything himself obvious, that doesn't mean something significant wasn't there that could have led to a resolution a lot faster. Making assumptions, and that's what he's doing, is making assumptions based on a quick look is really risky, especially in situations like this where you're looking for a little person. He's basically implying because he didn't see anything, he didn't see any evidence of forced entry, that means that Quentin wandered off. And we all know that that's not what happened. But he wasn't really leaving room for that. And basically he's saying, since there's no proof of a break-in, it didn't happen. Not finding something doesn't prove it isn't there or didn't happen. The lack of forced entry could mean many things, not just that Quentin wandered off. Okay, I'm going to take a look at this one. In this one, Sean Wilkins had kind of got a little bit spicy with Sean Wilkins, but he had a lot of good, there's a lot of good information in his testimony.
Explained that she had gone to bed at approximately midnight that evening, and yes, that is approximately midnight that evening.
And was she putting that out there as the last time she had seen her child, Quentin, I should say?
Okay, so this is, I think it was Detective Sean Wilkins. And he had, there was a couple of different interesting points in his testimony. And there's one point, this point right here, where he's talking about Leilani's statement on when she last saw her son, Quentin. Instead of saying something like, Leilani said the last time she saw her child was before bed, the prosecutor puts out there, or no, oh, I got this out of order. Anyway, he's kind of making this a hard and fast thing. Either this is her statement, either it's true or it's not. Now we're going to look at the other, well, shoot, sorry guys. Okay, I got my notes crazy. Anyway, the prosecutor in this, he does say, Leilani said the last time she saw her child was before bed. And then he says, she's putting it out there as the last time she saw him. That doesn't seem like a big deal at first, but think about it. The phrase putting it out there feels kind of loaded. It's not really a neutral statement. Instead, it can make it sound like Leilani's story is something she's offering up as if it might not be completely genuine. And you can kind of see how that putting it out there, that kind of has like a little bit of a, maybe a bite to it that, I'm trying to think of how to put it, that maybe that's true, maybe it's not, like she's just like trying to fly it like a kite, see if it works all right, that kind of a situation. So it's kind of a subtle nudge or planting a little bit of doubt in the jury's mind without directly accusing Leilani of lying. It's pretty clever because the way he's doing it under the guise of he is getting facts, and that's the point of his questioning. He is getting facts. He's also kind of implanting, you can use, little bits of language and kind of spin things a certain way to influence how people perceive something or decisions that they make. Okay, and then, yeah, this is something I think we see a lot all over the place. We see it on YouTube, we see it in commercials, we hear it when we talk to our family members. Just this kind of, where people will plant a little seed. Sometimes we don't hear it, but sometimes we do. We see it very clearly. Um, but it hints at the idea that her timeline might be more an attempt to create an alibi than a straightforward account of what happened. And then this one I thought was pretty interesting right here.
Mr. Wilkins, how long have you been in law enforcement?
I was employed as a police dispatcher in Holliston, Massachusetts for approximately 3 years. After that, in 2021, is when I was employed with the Chatham County Police Department for about 2.5 years.
So from like 2018 to 2021, you were a police dispatcher. I guess you moved down here and were
Patrolman at that time.
patrolman at Chatham County.
Yes, and then transitioned into detective role in September of 2022.
And you were a detective from September and then went back to patrol in February?
That is correct, yes.
I was just curious. That's kind of a short time. Why?
I just didn't feel fulfilled, I guess, at in the detective unit.
So, and then when did you move back to Massachusetts?
So I left the detective unit in February of 2023 and was on patrol. And then I would say in July of 2023 is when I moved back to Massachusetts.
All right. So you've been up there about 15 months.
Okay, this, I thought it was something interesting, is because this ended up being kind of like a shot across the bow. If you're kind of paying attention, the prosecutor took a shot across the bow with his comment of Leilani's putting it out there. So what the defense attorney is doing here is, this is kind of another shot back across the bow, where he's pointing out that Detective Wilkins, that he had a short period of time that he was with the detective or the detectives unit. And then he mentions that, he started as a patrol officer, moved to detective vision in 2022, only to switch back to patrol in 2023. Excuse me. And the defense attorney, he specifically asks, well, why the quick change? Wilkins says he didn't feel fulfilled in the detective role. And that's it. They just move on. What that does is it kind of puts a question about the level of dedication that Wilkins had to uh, making sure that there was a thorough investigation of exactly what happened to Quentin Simon, that there is a, lack of dedication to getting down to the truth. And it's, you can't, the vague comment of not feeling fulfilled, it's kind of like, what does that mean? It's kind of leaves you there wondering exactly, well, what was it that wasn't fulfilling? Was your heart really in the job? And so the defense attorney is basically calling into question the reliability of Detective Wilkins' testimony. And what this means for the case is if the jury is picking up on phrasing, putting it out there, and questioning why Wilkins left the detective unit so quickly, they might start seeing cracks in this whole thing. They could start to think, well, if the detective wasn't completely dedicated to the role and the prosecutor is nudging us to doubt the defendant's story, how solid is this case? So it's kind of, these kind of two like little shots across the bow and little hints, they kind of I guess, almost kind of looked to neutralize Detective Wilkins' testimony. All right, the next one I wanted to look at Kiana Robbins. She had some interesting points to make.
The Islands Precinct.
Yes, sir.
And at some point, were you asked, or did you just decide to run the defendant's name, Leilani Simon, and see whether there were any vehicles registered to her that you could see in your system?
I was asked by the detectives on scene
Okay. And how did they ask you? Over the radio, cell phone, or what?
through text.
Okay. So who was on the scene at that point that may have asked you to do that, if you remember?
I believe it was Detective Noble and Detective Wilkins.
Okay. So one or both of them asked you to run her name and see about vehicle registrations.
Yes, sir.
And did you see that any particular vehicle was registered to her?
I believe that there was a Dodge Journey registered to her.
Do you remember the tag number for the Dodge Journey?
Yes, it was TEN9300.
And is that a Georgia tag?
Yes, sir.
One moment, please. Now, do you see in front of you a document marked as State's Exhibit 6?
Yes, sir.
Do you know what that is?
It appears to be a license plate reader from Flock.
Okay, a flock camera?
Yes, sir.
All right. Does it fairly and accurately depict what a typical flock camera looks like?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, I would move this in as State's Exhibit 6.
No objection, Judge, I've already seen it.
It's admitted.
And may I ask, rather than putting this up on the screen, if it could just be published by passing it to the jury?
That's fine, Judge.
And would the court like for me to do that, or would the court prefer that a deputy do that?
What does the state want this to do?
I'm fine.
Are these photos?
It's just a single photograph.
It's just one picture, Judge.
Okay. So you can,
Thank you. Now, what is a flock camera and what is the flock system?
So essentially, it's a license plate reader that is stationed throughout different areas throughout the U.S. The Flock system is made only public to law enforcement agencies, so you have to have a username and a password through your agency to actually use the system.
And did you have that on October 5th of 2022?
Yes, sir.
Roughly how many of these cameras are there scattered around Chatham County? Off the top of your head, I'm not looking for a firm number.
About 300.
Okay. And do you have access to the information from all of those?
Yes.
Do you have access to information?
Okay, so from the testimony from Detective Kiana Robbins, in this case, is she explains her role in the investigation and what it is that she discovered. Now, she wasn't actually on scene. She was actually at her desk 30 to 45 minutes away from the scene. And that's when she was asked to check on any vehicles registered to Leilani Simon. Detective Robbins finds out that there is a Dodge Journey registered to Leilani, and then uses a system called the Flock camera system to track the car's movements. Here's where things get interesting. Is the Dodge Journey was caught on the Flock cameras a few times during the night on October 4th and early October 5th. She goes and she tells her boss, Lieutenant Foster, about it, even sending him a screenshot of the car's hits on the camera. Here's the thing. Just because the car was out driving, that doesn't automatically mean it's suspicious. Detective Robbins seems to imply that the car being out late at night might have something to do with the case. Here's the catch. We don't have any idea who was driving the car. It could have been anyone. Just seeing the car on camera doesn't tell us the whole story. If we jump to the conclusion that the car's movement is somehow related to the case without knowing more, we're filling in the blanks with assumptions and not facts. The detective talks about how only law enforcement has access to the flock system. Now, this kind of gives the impression that it's 100% accurate just because it's a restricted tool. There's also, and the flock cameras, I'm not taking away from those when I question this. It doesn't, just because only cops have access to it, doesn't make it flawless. And in her testimony, by pointing out that law enforcement is the only ones who have access to it, it's kind of making the exclusivity of the system makes it sound more trustworthy. But that's not necessarily the case. Another kind of point is that we're kind of led to believe flock camera data is a complete record of where the car went. She says it herself, there's only like 300 of these cameras, and they only capture certain spots. So we're really only seeing pieces of the car's route. We don't really know if all the data we have paints the full picture. Just because we see movements on these cameras doesn't mean we have the whole story. So in court, leaving these gaps open, again, this nudges the jury to draw a specific conclusion that might not be supported by the facts. We don't know who was driving the vehicle. And this is our last one. If you guys have time, go over and to Court TV and review this guy's testimony, because it is absolutely, the whole thing is absolutely fascinating. But I've just picked out one small piece because I don't want to drag you guys through the entire thing all again. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to flip on over to Eugene Foster.
Long after October 5th, but into later in the eventual landfill search that was a part of this investigation. Now, were you a part of the landfill search?
From the very beginning.
And what was your role or roles, I guess?
I had multiple roles. We were there to set up the initial site to start the search of the trash that was there. I was there prior to us starting the search. We were there getting equipment. Logistically speaking, I was there to make sure the equipment was there, resources, fueling the vehicles, making sure water was up there, bringing food. I mean, I was kind of a jack of all trades on that.
Were you involved in ensuring that there was enough PPE for all the searchers?
Yes, sir. I was part of that along with another individual from the department. We ended up setting up all the PPE in order to make sure everybody was safe while they were going through this potentially biohazardous material and trash.
I'm sorry, and were you there for every day of the landfill search?
I was there every day.
Okay. What were the hours of the landfill search on any given day?
We would, honestly, we literally, myself and another lieutenant showed up prior to everybody showing up. We were there at 5 o'clock in the morning, and we did not leave easily until 5 in the afternoon, 5:30 in the afternoon. And the only time I actually left is when we had a uniform security, a uniformed police officer coming to do security of the landfill site after hours.
Tell me about the after-hours security plan at the landfill.
We usually traditionally broke down about 4:30, 5 o'clock to clean everybody up, decontaminate everybody. And then once all the searchers were bussed out, I was the last person there waiting for the relief uniformed officer to come there and sit on the site. That way we had security there at the site 24/7. Somebody from the police department had eyes on that site 24/7 from the time that we started to the time that we ended.
And are you talking about the entrance to the landfill on Little Neck Road, or are you talking about inside the landfill at the search area specifically, or both?
But there was security at the entrance of the landfill, but that was done by the city of Savannah because that was their area. The actual site where the volunteers and the people who were assigned to the search was actually done by Chatham County Police personnel.
Okay. Was the area kept well lit at night?
Yes, sir. We actually had floodlights that came on. The officers were instructed to turn them on when it got dark. Sometimes when we were still there, I would have them turned on before the officer even got there.
And what was the point of all this?
So we could have visibility of the area at all times. That way there would be no chance, any way, shape, or form that that area could be contaminated by somebody other than the law enforcement searchers who were involved and police personnel. And of course, waste management personnel that were allowed to be there.
Now, did you pull that overnight security duty yourself at any point?
Unfortunately, a few times I had to, yes, sir.
And what did that involve for you?
Basically being in a marked unit, being in a uniform, sitting there, looking at the landing where the trash was brought to, I hate to say it that way, but trash was brought there to be searched, and looking at the site where they were actually pulling from to bring down to the landing. We had all that lit up to where you could actually see the whole thing.
Do you remember, were you present on the day that Quentin's remains were finally found?
Unfortunately, yes, I was.
And what were you doing at the landfill that day? What were your duties on that day?
Again, based off of the logistics part and setting everything up and all that, while we were there and they were searching, we were actually stationed by, and every time something of significance was found, they alerted us. And then they would bring whatever certain items that they found and took it over to the forensic anthropologist to review.
And was that the last day of the landfill search?
Yes, sir.
Overall, how many days would you say that you were out? You may not remember off the top of your head, but roughly how long did this landfill saga last for?
I remember it was it after previous Thanksgiving? I think approximately 4 weeks. It was a very extended search.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Mr. Hilliard?
Thank you.
Lieutenant Foster, how many people were searching at the landfill over the course of that 5 or 6 week period?
Easily between 20 to 30 a day.
And so let's say how many days? 45 days, let's say. So 20 or 30 a day times 45 days, that's a lot of people, isn't it?
Correct.
Okay. In and out. And that's not counting everybody else who's coming in and out of the landfill in normal routine business, correct?
Correct, but the majority of the searchers were the same.
I don't think I had a question before you. Did I?
Objection, Your Honor. I'm going to ask that the witness be allowed to complete his answer.
I don't believe
There wasn't a question.
So, Mr. Hilliard, I'm going to ask that you move on.
So Lieutenant Foster, so there was, I'd say, easily hundreds of people in and out of that place during this time frame, correct?
Not hundreds, no.
Not during the course of these several weeks?
Not hundreds, no.
Okay. Thousands in?
No, not thousands.
So if you had 20 or 30 people a day times 45 days, okay? Is it the same 20 or 30 people every day?
Majority of the days, yes, sir.
Okay. But not every day.
Not every day, no.
Okay. So it was different people.
Sometimes.
Okay. So that being said, this is a dump, correct?
It is a dump.
And you have a number of people coming in conducting normal business, and you have a number of people coming in conducting searching, correct?
Correct.
Is that a fair and accurate statement?
That is fair and accurate.
Okay. And you said a minute ago that you were genuinely, you didn't think that you you were trying to protect against contamination at a dump site with all these people in and out of it.
Correct.
Is that genuinely what you just testified to?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Now, that being said, at 535 Buckhalter Road, how many people were there on October 5th?
My entire west side, so we're talking 6 to 7 officers, my sergeant, myself, and then once we really started doing the search, command staff, federal authorities, but as far as going into the house, it was pretty much my officers, myself, and then the investigators that I know of.
So I guess it's a fair number of people that day at least.
Correct.
Okay, I thought this one was this one's kind of interesting because they got a little bit adversarial there, and the witness was kind of he was arguing with defense counsel. So anyway, Lieutenant Foster, now he led the search for Quentin's remains at the dump, and he really stresses how much effort was put into keeping the area secure. They had officers stationed around the clock. They set up floodlights at night. They were strict about who could access the search area. They wanted to really kind of keep things as, I guess, maybe a clean of a search area as you could at a dump. It's kind of ironic to think of the two things don't really go together. But the defense, he had some good questions that pointed out that a landfill is a landfill. It's full of trash with people coming and going daily. And even with 20 to 30 people searching every day for weeks, the defense is arguing that keeping a pure search area in such an active dump site is unrealistic. And the main point the defense highlighted was that with all of the garbage and constant activity, wasn't it possible things could get buried or accidentally moved around? They were really asking, how can you be sure what you found actually relates to this case? And it's a fair question about the reliability of the evidence in such a messy environment. So here's the takeaway. Foster's idea of a secure site is based on his experience, but that doesn't guarantee control over everything in a landfill. The defense challenged this assumption, suggesting that expertise in police work doesn't necessarily mean they could avoid every possible mix-up at the landfill. In the end, this back and forth is a reminder to think critically about how evidence is collected in different kinds of settings. And just because precautions are taken, it doesn't mean evidence is foolproof, which the defense was quick to point out. And again, this is something I think is really important, is to focus on not just in this situation, but in the world around us, day in, day out. What are people telling us? Is what they're telling us really plausible? Can they really accomplish what it is they're trying to accomplish? How accurate is what others telling us? How accurate is it? So we have to, it's important to think critically, because there are lots of little missteps that people make by accident, and some of them are intentional. As you can tell, the prosecution counsel was deliberately putting little seeds of doubt in the minds of the jurors. So we have to listen really, really close to what people around us are telling us when they talk to us about anything. So that's about it. as far as I wanted to talk about this. If you guys like my content and you want me to keep going down this road, give me a like. And I hope to see you guys soon. And I hope you enjoyed this. And there's a little bit more that you learned, and to look at the world around you and your interactions with others a little bit more critically, and kind of engage yourself a little bit more with different conversations that you're having with people, and engage your mind a little bit more when you're taking in different things on YouTube. Think about what people are really saying, and what they're really telling you, and what they're really showing you. So that's about it. I hope everybody has a great rest of your Sunday. And thank you so much for taking the time to stop in. And if you like the content, please go